Hi, I'm Stephanie Rozzo. Welcome to Nature Sketch Create's Heartleaf Skullcap step-by-step painting instructions video. In this video, I'll be showing you how to paint the Heartleaf Skullcap using the Nature Sketch Create step-by-step painting instructions. First, collect all your materials and make sure they're ready to go. Remember, this is just a sketch. Take your time, have fun, and relax. Don't worry too much if you think you might have made a mistake. Step 1, transfer the image to the watercolor paper. So go ahead and make sure that the transfer image is taped to the watercolor paper. Just put the tape on the top or side and then attach it to the back of the watercolor paper. Open it up and place the graphite transfer paper dark side down, light side up onto the watercolor paper. And then just close that down, gently flatten it. And it doesn't have to be exactly lined up with the watercolor paper or the transfer image, as long as the graphite transfer paper is under the image lines, then you'll be fine. So go ahead and start transferring by tracing over the lines. You want to use about a medium pressure and just trace right over those. After you have a few transferred, go ahead and pick it up and look at the watercolor paper and see that all those lines are actually transferring properly. And it looks like they are, but a medium pressure will give you lines about that dark. Then you can go ahead and go throughout and transfer all of these lines. Take your time and relax, and if you get any lines wrong, it's okay. This is just a sketch. If you don't get exact, it's fine. Make sure to kind of just take your time and relax, kind of a meditative exercise. And you can put on an audiobook or maybe a podcast or some music and just enjoy your time and draw over all of those lines. It's good to flip up the image a few times to make sure all the lines actually got transferred. If they didn't, it's okay, you can draw them in later, but it's easier to have them transferred at this point. I usually miss one or two. It looks pretty good. So I'm gonna go ahead and also transfer the common name and scientific name. Now that all these lines are transferred, go ahead and take out the transfer paper. Set it to the side. You can reuse it over and over. You can see mine has been used many, many times. It's so great. And remove the tape from the back of the watercolor paper. And then take the tape off your transfer image. And just set that to the side. I like to use mine over. You don't have to, but I think it can be used many times. And you'll want to keep this transfer image so that you can protect your watercolor painting while you're painting it. And take your kneaded eraser and remove any marks or lines that are too dark. Everything looks pretty good on this transfer, so I think just kind of run it over the image a little bit just to make sure there's nothing on there I don't want. Maybe little hairs or anything. A little bit of fuzz, and I will go ahead and leave it like that. I'm ready to move on to step 2. Step 2, paint in the wettest, lightest layer of skullcap green. First, you want to mix the color, and it requires a lot of Hansa yellow light because that Payne's gray is very dark. We want a lighter green, so we have 30 drops of this Hansa yellow light. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30. And only one drop of the Payne's Gray. Make sure to shake up your paint. Sometimes the pigment settles, although these P.H. Martin Hydrus liquid watercolors have such a wonderful, bright, vibrant color. Take your preloaded water brush or your paintbrush with some water, not a lot, just a tiny bit, mixed up. Then pull a bit of it to the side and add a bunch of water to it to get that lighter color, the wetter color. And adding more water will make this a lighter color, and you want to add it on the palette, not your paper. All right, dab it off onto your towel and then test it on your test strip. That looks like a skullcap green that we want to use. So we're going to paint that color onto the image as we see in step 2. So I'll pick up a little bit of it, dab it off onto my towel, and then I like to start top to bottom, left to right. And if you're unsure and that image might be a little too small for you, just refer to your final reference image. Like this, got a little bit of paint spots on it. And if it's too dark, it looks a little dark, just add a little water to your brush onto your towel, dab it off, and then continue painting. And that should lighten it up enough and keep from adding too much water to your watercolor paper, which will prevent your paper from buckling. This paper is meant for these washes, these layers of color that don't have a lot of water added to them on the paper itself. You want to use your palette. Oh, there's a line I missed right there. Noticing. That's okay, because I can look at my reference image and figure out where that's supposed to be. And if it's not the same, it's totally fine. I find this painting these images changes every time based on my mood, how I'm feeling on a given day. So personality tends to change paintings. You'll find yours will be different because you are a different person. But it'll be similar, and I'm sure it'll be beautiful. So just go throughout and paint all of these areas just like this, all the way down through to the leaves. When I'm painting the leaves, I have a little paint out sign. That's fine because it's just this kind of style. When I'm painting these leaves, I like to start in the center personally, and then kind of work into the corners and the edges. Helps to prevent lines from dried edges, although those lines add extra character to the painting, so they're kind of fun. And I'll do the same thing here. I could treat this area as a space of its own. It's a little dark, so I'm going to dab it off my brush onto my towel and pull this paint through. It's a little darker than I wanted. That's fine too. I find that the unpredictability of watercolor adds a lot of character to paintings. It's a lot of fun letting it do whatever it ends up doing, to a certain extent, of course. Add that in. Oh, maybe I'll put another layer in there for consistency. It's one consistent layer there. And I'm going to clean off my brush. Oh, there's one little stem I missed. Get that little stem, and then I'll clean my brush off. And I will move on to step 3. Step 3, paint in the wettest, lightest skullcap purple. The leaves are still a little damp, and that's okay. I can still go ahead and paint in that purple because these are all dry. And I'm just going to be painting in these flowers here. So go ahead and mix the skullcap purple, 5 drops of the quinacridone violet, 30H. Oh, make sure to shake that up first. My bottle of this has been a little leaky because this cap is at an angle, so I'm not storing it quite right. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then 1 drop of the Payne's Gray. Make sure to mix that up again, just in case. 1 drop there. Mix it up with just a tiny bit of water. And then pull some to the side because we'll be using the wettest, lightest color and adding water to it on our palette. Dabbing it off onto my towel because my brush is already, even though we've created this lighter color, there's still a lot of pigment in my brush. I'll add a little more water to it, dab it off onto my towel again, and test it out on my test strip. And that looks pretty good, maybe a little bit lighter. So I pull the little bit of paint to the side again, dab it off onto my towel and test it again. I like that color a little bit better. And now I can add it to my painting. And again, if anything is, the details in step 3's image are too small, just refer to your final reference image. It's a little dark. So just dab that off onto my towel and then start adding the paint. And a little bit of water will come out onto your brush, just naturally from the water brush. You can just add it. I'm kind of adding it to the edges a little bit and then working my way in. These flowers are a little darker on the outer edges. It's a little lighter on this corolla area. So kind of starting here because there's more paint in my brush right now. And then moving down to the corollas. And these flowers on the bottom, the upper lid is a little darker than the lower lid. Lower lip, not lid. And so I'll dab my brush off a bit more just to make sure not to get that too concentrated on that lip. And if I went a little dark, it's okay because this is just a sketch. Go ahead and paint in this, and I'm not paying too close of attention to the lines, so if you get a little bit of paint outside those tiny lines, these tiny areas, it's okay. It'll still look great. And I'm noticing I didn't add enough green down here, so I might add that after I'm done with this purple color. A little bit more here, and in this area here, and this one here. And maybe, looks like all the parts that I should be doing right at the moment. So I'll pick up a little bit more of that green since I missed it. It's totally fine to make lots of mistakes with these exercises, painting these sketches. This technique lends to mistakes. It's totally fine. So now that I have all of the skullcap purple sea added in, I'm going to go ahead and let that dry and move on to step 4. Step 4, paint in the drier, darker skullcap green. So just pick up a little bit of that green, test it on your paper to see if it matches color B. Looks good. And basically we're going to add it to the edges of the leaves and the buds and the fruit and the calyx as well. So kind of redrawing those lines a little bit, and not all of them, so just make sure to refer to your picture. But this is your painting, so if you want to do more, you can. And go through and just kind of go over and add those. So once you paint that color on the leaves, go ahead and pick up a slightly wetter, less concentrated color, A, and add it to those leaves and just go ahead and go over it and shade it similar to what you see in your final reference image in step 4, and those two colors will blend together a little bit, which will look nice. And you can do the same thing. You can add a little bit more to it too if you want, and then the color bleeds a little bit into the other wet areas. And you can do the same thing to the other leaf, adding the darker color B to the lines and maybe to some of the serrated edges here, these spiky edges. And get all these lines here, pretty dark, concentrated, and it doesn't need to be exact. This is just a sketch, so can't see some of the lines are a little too small or whatever. It's okay. And don't get it right, it's fine. It's going to make your painting unique. And then pick up some of that A color again. You can test it on your paper if you're not sure, and just kind of blend it over, letting those colors merge a bit. Once they dry a little bit, some of it sticks and then the rest kind of will help create a little bit more of a gradient on that. It's a slightly different technique than we've used in the past. Something a little different. And then you can dry off your paintbrush onto your towel. Make sure it's clean before moving on to step 5. Step 5, paint in the drier, darker skullcap purple. It's good to let this dry so you don't smudge it. Most of this upper green area is dry already though, and we're just going to be again working on the flowers. So you don't have to let the whole image dry. Just be careful to avoid the wet leaves on the bottom. So you want that really dry, dark purple. Test it on your test strip, dab it on your paper so you don't get too much paint. It's hard to control where it goes if you have too much. And go ahead and add it like you see in step 5. And to create a little bit of a gradient, just go ahead and add some to the edges and the outside lines of the flower. So here on the upper lip and maybe in the upper corolla, a little bit on the bottom lip there. Dab off your brush, clean it off on your towel. Get enough water in there. And then take that wet, clean brush and just drip on it and just kind of move it over the edges into the center area of that flower a little bit. And that will create a little bit of a gradient. Real simple way to do that, where there's a little dark on the edges and light on the inside. So you can go ahead and do the same technique throughout all of those little flowers, doing a little dark on the outside and then taking a wet, clean brush and lightening it a little bit, taking it and letting that kind of create a gradient. Once you have all the flowers done, you can add some of those speckles, which is really fun, onto the lower lip of these bottom flowers. If it's too wet, don't do it because it'll do just like that. It'll kind of bleed. So just be careful where you're adding it. And I just wanted to demonstrate how that happens. If you want that effect, then go ahead and do it. Now that I am done with adding that D color, I'm going to go ahead and move on to step 6. Step 6, paint in the skullcap yellow. I shook up the Hansa yellow light in case there was any settling of the pigment, and I'm going to get a couple drops. Doesn't really matter if you use 1 or 2 because we're not mixing it with any other colors. Take a little bit of that, test it onto your paper. Make sure not to mix it with the other colors because you do want it to be yellow. Add a little bit more water to it because mine's a bit dark. And I had a little bit of green in that as well. So that was not what I wanted. Check it out. Still a bit dark, so I add a little bit more water to it in my palette, dab it off onto a clean part of my towel, and check it one more time. I think that looks good. And that's just simply added to all of the little upper buds here. There are not a lot, so just really quick. And then you can add a little bit more purple D after you clean off your brush to the flowers where needed. So it needs a little bit more here, I can tell. And you can refer to your final reference image as to where some of that color might be needed in your painting. Maybe your spots bled like mine and you need a little bit more in there. Just depends on where your painting's at. I'm just going to add it throughout based on my final reference image here. Just adding a little extra level of contrast to make these images, these flowers on this image pop. Now that I have all my paints in, I can go ahead and move on to step 7. Step 7, add ink lines. Start with the 005 black micron to add lines to the plants and the common name and scientific name. And then after you're done with that, you can add some of the little short hairlines throughout. A lot of fun. They're not anywhere too particular. You can see in the final image, they're kind of on the edges of all the leaves and the calyx here. And just kind of speckle them in on the outside. And some on the inside as well, but it's mostly noticeable on the outside. So just go ahead and refer to your final reference image for that. And basically you'll be drawing in all of the lines like you did with your transfer drawing, drawing those lines in again using this very small pen. And you can refer to your final reference image or your transfer image for where to put those lines. Or maybe you even have some lines showing through that you can follow. So just go ahead and go through and add all of those in. Now that you have all of the 005 lines added in, go ahead and add in your 01 micron lines. You want to thicken a few of these lines and refer to A in step 7 for that, and add in the scientific name and a little bit thicker. So go ahead and go through and do those things. Now that I've added in all of the 01 lines, I'm going to go ahead and finish this painting with the 08 black micron. I'm going to go ahead and fill in the common name and then just add some thick lines such as to the leaves here in the bottom and maybe a few throughout here, but very sparingly. You can refer to 7B for where you want to add those lines. And I'm going to add this part last because otherwise I tend to smudge it up while it's drying. So just go ahead and add a few of those final lines wherever you think you need a little bit of a thicker line to add a bit more contrast, or just refer to 7B or your final image. All right, now I'm done, and as you can see, it is a bit different from the final image. The print is not going to do justice to the color, the vibrancy of the paint. We are done. Great job. You have created a painting that's unique to you. Thank you for joining me. I hope you had fun and had a chance to relax a little. Next, you have a few options of what you can do with this painting. You can punch holes in it and add it to your sketchbook. You can gift it, frame it, also make sure to add it to our Facebook fan page. Check out the Nature Sketch Crate website to sign up for a newsletter for regular updates and to shop for future crates. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe to this YouTube channel.